Hey everybody, it's Cinnamon Cooney, your Art Sherpa, and today we have a big one for you. This is an all the Hoot deep dive, wonderful spring landscape. It's a great forest scene with lots of wildflowers and a sunlit path just going off into the distance. And I'm going to explain how to paint this painting step by step in real time. So I break down every step, every color mix, every layer of this big boy, and you follow along at home. And as we go through it together, you will end up with your own version of this fabulous painting. Now, I hide all the materials in the description down below, so if you open up that little more, you're going to see all the color mixes, links to the website. There's a traceable there. There's more information there that you can get into. On the mic, you'll hear my husband, John.
Hey.
So he helps make sure that I stay on track during these big lessons, and that the camera is pointing at what I'm talking about and the color mixes, and that we're keeping track of the steps. We do break this down into steps, and on this one, I'm going to say, on the bigger ones, try to break it down into little increments where you paint a little bit and rest, paint a little bit and rest, because it's actually physically demanding to paint a big painting like this, and you've got to pace yourself. So if this is your first high hoot, really give yourself that break where you paint as long as you feel comfortable, but as soon as you start to feel fatigued, rest and come back, save your spot, and the thing will be like, I'm on step 5, then you can come back to step 5. So that's how you do that. All right, you've opened the description. You know what's going on. There's really nothing to do but get your paint, get your brushes, and come back and meet me at the easel right now. We're going to paint this. Come on. So for the materials for today's class, I have an 11 by 14 canvas, and on my palette, I have the following colors. I have Mars Black, Phthalo Green, Burnt Sienna, Yellow Ochre, Cad Yellow Medium, Phthalo Blue, Ultramarine Blue, Quinacridone Magenta, and Cad Red Medium. Right here, what looks like white is actually Satin Glazing Liquid by Golden Artist Colors. This is a blending and slow drying medium. And I have titanium whites. That's what we're going to be using in today's color palette. And I think there's nothing to do but put up step 1.
All right.
Which is going to be the fun step, because we're going to just paint it one color. And we're going to paint this particular step, we're going to paint it ultramarine blue. And I'm just picking this because it's not an overpowering color. It's in harmony with all the other things I have to do in the landscape. And it's going to let me just do what's called toning the canvas. You don't have to put your paint out like this. This is just a whimsical thing that I do. You could just paint from the palette.
So when you say you tone your palette, like in here in my head is, don't take that tone with me, and then maintain low tones.
Yeah, I think it's definitely about knocking it back. The white canvas is a lot to overcome for these colors, so it's nice to bring that in. Another trick I do is I'm going to take a 1-inch oval mop and my mister brush, and I'm just going to mist this, get my oval mop a little bit wet, and paint it out, because I'm not trying to paint a big thick thing of paint. I'm just making the canvas blue, so I'm not starting on a white canvas. That's really all it is. You can also paint this blue totally around the edges if you want. If you don't want to, frame and you want to go to directly hanging, you can do that as well. You can see it's just about smearing the paint around. A little more misty mist. Again, I'm just getting this paint all over the whole canvas.
And is there any particular directionality you're trying to maintain?
Not yet right now. I'm just trying to get an even coat, and then I will probably smooth out that even coat as I get it out, but I'm just trying to get out the even coat. This is also going to help me, divide the zones of my canvas, and then when I try to make the deep, rich colors, this having a nice blue at the background, it will help. And then where I'm doing the light sky, it being blue will also help keep that sky, even though it's going to be really light, with a feeling of being blue. So I just go back and forth till all of the white is completely covered. And the paint is definitely smeared out. And again, you could do it right from the palette to here. But I just like to keep my palette clean before I start. And also on the time-lapse recordings that we do of these, I think it's fun to see the little squiggles go out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just sort of enjoy it. I do want to paint around the corners here, just enough so that if, even if you don't want to paint the sides, just enough so that if I frame, there isn't white showing, peeking around the frame. That's a thing to do. I'll go back through and smooth that out. And then I'm going to dry this whole layer of blue, which can be very streaky. So if your blue is streaky, don't be stressed about that at all. You just want to make sure you have a nice even coat of ultramarine. I rinse out my brush and I'm going to put that aside because what do we do after we go out paint with our brushes? We wash them with soap and water because that extends their life. So I put that aside where I know I can wash it with soap and water. I'm going to dry this with a hairdryer, come back and show you what we do next. Okay, in this step, I'm going to do something interesting. I'm going to divide my canvas in half and then again in half, horizontally and then vertically. So this is a 11 by 14. So I know that my ruler doesn't have to go all the way across. This is a T-square ruler that it's at the 7-inch mark that I'm going to make a vertical line. And I will check that vertices 2 directions. This is just going to help me lay in where my object placement is. Right, just check that by putting the head down there. Sometimes these plastic rulers aren't perfectly on square, so I find just doing a little check like this helps give me something crisper. Now, 11 inches I'm going to divide in half, which is 5.5 inches. And I guess on centimeters, it's almost to 18 centimeters at the 7-inch mark. And it's between 12 and 13 at the, no, it's really at the 14 at the 5.5-inch mark. So I do this one across and then flip it around. And this is just so that I can lay out my objects and do my object placement compositionally. It's helping me think about my canvas as a composition as much as thinking about the scene I'm trying to create. Also lets me know where my center of canvas is. Right? So this is sort of where we're bringing the viewer in the path. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just lightly sketch in where this is going to go. So the path here is going to kind of start above the halfway mark a little bit and come down. We'll curve out towards the right and then back in over left. Then this side of it, going to come and curve round pretty wide, almost like this. That's our perspective. And then our vanishing point is kind of up here where we don't see the path going anymore.
Thus it vanishes.
Thus it vanishes. Then back here is where I'm going to have my distant landscape. And so I know that my hill's going to come up kind of up here over to the left, a couple inches above that halfway line. And then I have kind of another embankment, block of bushes, trees and things that comes over this much. So this back here is going to be my sort of distant trees and corridor of light. And then as I come forward, my objects will be more in focus and more where I'm looking. So that's that step. When we come back, I'm going to tell you what you do next. So I'm going to be using a number 20 Raphael D'Artagnan brush. This is a round. It's just a big hog bristle brush. I have a smaller one I'm going to be using, but I like to start out with the bigger one because it's a bigger canvas and I want to, make some of these jobs a little bit easier for me. So over on this side, I'm going to start with my dark colors. I'm going to start with my dark green, which is my burnt sienna and my phthalo green together. They're very, very dark. For over here, kind of get them worked together. This is just the start of that. And this whole area, kind of above the hill, is very dark. Not that hard to get in. And I'm just scruffling the brush back and forth. I'm not that worried about it. There's lots of little variants in kind of tree color and everything that I'm going to be doing back here, but I just want to start with that basic burnt sienna phthalo green. Now, I'm not going to color it straight across, just so you're aware. It's going to kind of come down in this irregular pattern down this way and kind of be fading out to much lighter colors. As I'm coming down. And the blue does give us like a nice deep dark area to start from. I can get a little of the white in there and get a little bit of my yellow ochre. Just kind of make a slightly lighter little color that's sort of coming forward through here. Maybe a little bit back in there. Piece this back into the little bushes over here. Get that nice green embankment going. I'm going to rinse out and I'm going to dry my brush off with a towel because I don't want it to get very waterlogged. And it just very easily can get waterlogged. And over here, I'm going to start getting into my grays, which is my burnt sienna and my ultramarine blue. And I'll go ahead and start with my deepest, darkest gray. And then build towards that center. My deepest, darkest gray will be just a little more blue than burnt sienna. I might take it down a little bit past my horizon line there. It's sort of just a bloopy shape, really. And get a little bit of white into it. Start blending in some gray. And this is just that first layering. So I'm going to get a slightly darker color going, and I want it to be darker, lower, like down here, and then getting lighter as it comes up into this zone. And that's just to help me see the light coming out. But this is just the first layer, so we don't have to be perfect yet. I may kind of stipple or make this line irregular or unfocused. And then as I come through, I'm going to lighten up a good bit. And here in the center, I'm going to kind of just bring it in lighter. And then as I'm coming up towards the top, I'm going to take a little bit, just a smidge of my phthalo blue, quite a lot of my white. And start to work this down. And maybe be down a little bit more in a V. And that odd series of shapes is a good place to begin.
It's a very nice series of shapes.
A little weird series of shapes is a good place to begin. So what I have here is my dark green coming down through here and my dark gray coming through here. It starts to lighten in the center, and then up where the sky is going to be, it's much lighter, almost white. Now I'm going to dry everything so I can do the next layer. Now I'm going to block in where my greenery is, my kind of midground greenery to my foreground, and also my forest path. So I'm going to take a little of my brown to the side, and I'm going to grab a little black into it, and make kind of a nice chocolatey brown. This is just a good place to start. And down here at the bottom, I'm going to kind of work this in with a chocolatey brown. Now I'm going to have dappled light and everything through here, but this is just to give me like the laying in of my path.
Just the base.
Yeah, this is what you might consider
Basic
blocking
path.
in or the underpainting. We're just blocking it in.
Yeah.
Blocking in what's here, what we're going to be painting, what it looks like. Now as I'm coming back, I can add some white into my path because it's going to get lighter as it goes back. It's kind of uneven on these edges because, like, you know, sometimes the greenery comes forward and sometimes the greenery goes back. Now, at one point, we'll have to be very attentive to the brush directionality because we're going to be doing dappled light down the path, but it's just generally this dark to that light. I'm going to rinse that out. Now I'm going to come here and take a little of my ultramarine blue over to my Mars black. I'm still using I'm using a 3/4 inch Catalyst brush by Princeton angle brush. I'm using an angle brush. I'm going to come here and make a very dark zone with the black and the blue. It's going to come through here. This is very deep. This is the deep forest, where I know it's going to be kind of interspersed with the trees. I'll break that up a little bit. And I am taking it down in my hill some, just because I know that I'm going to want to have this deep richness to build up all the bushes and everything. Then I'm going to come in and grab my dark green color and really just block in the rest of this dark green. So phthalo green, burnt sienna, some of these colors tend to be a little bit transparent. And by starting with a bit of the blue under here, I can prevent that transparency from messing with me.
Oh, that's nice.
Right? So as I'm trying to build up darker and darker colors, I'm not fighting how transparent browns and greens are.
Okay. Now, if the paint that we're using at home doesn't coat quite like yours, is it okay to do a couple like layers?
If you need to do a couple layers to get a result, it's okay to dry between layers and do a couple of layers to get a result.
Okay, that's cool.
You know, never stress over that. That's like, I'm going to grab a little bit of this gray right here. Kind of bring this in just there at the corner saying, all right, there's a little bit lighter here. Me coming back. Now this side, is again a very dark green. And the darkness of this green is going to help us make the bright, kind of glowing greens that we're going to want to have over here and take it into the deep dark shadow that we're going to want up front.
Oh, nice.
So that's for giving ourselves that base. Takes a little bit to get the underpainting in.
That's okay. It's just layers.
Yeah, it's just one bite at a time. One step at a time. You can do a pretty big painting as long as you do it one step at a time. I'm going to let this come into this zone. Maybe as I come forward, I might have a little bit of kind of yellow ochre through here, because even this dark color is a little bit lighter. A little bit of yellow ochre into my green. It's just real loose at this stage. My dark green, a little bit of yellow ochre. And we're just getting it all painted in. You can see I'm not even being that tidy with it at this stage.
You just need the blocks of color.
I just need these blocks of color. This is that work I've got to do early on so that my later work pays off. Making sure this is a dark green, making sure that the canvas is blocked into zones, making sure I know where my path is going. You know, bring some brown back here, just make sure my path is good. Sometimes I like to push it up into what is going to be the sides, because we'll be coming down and making little embankments and things, because it's rarely like, it's not generally a hedged path. Or well-kept path. It's a walked path, so it can be very erosion, things like that can make it very uneven. Now, that's a pretty good blocking in. I'm going to rinse my brush out, and I'm going to dry everything again with a hairdryer. So now I'm going to want to come in and kind of bring my sky a little bit low so I can come back with trees. I'm going to use my number 20 again because it's got a small enough tip for me to be able to do that. I'm going to go ahead and get my white out onto my palette. That smidge of phthalo blue. It's just a smidge. This layer will be quite bright. If I have too much water in, I will go ahead and wipe off the brush. That's the only thing about the hog bristles. Sometimes you can get too much water going in them. They do a nice scruffy job, but they can also be kind of hard to manage with water management. So I always have a towel nearby to squeeze them out.
Just squeeze it all out. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Coming back a little bit this way. I'm going to let that have a smidge of a rest. I'm going to add a little bit of white over to my black and blue. And I'm going to come in here and start to paint up this sort of little gray area. I'll make sure that there's little irregular bits starting here. We're starting to see a little bit of the irregular patterning. Maybe a little bit lighter for the center. And I'm going to also kind of get a little green in it just to be cheeky. So it's kind of a gray green here. Make sure that these edges are rough and irregular. Little blue into my black. Oh, that's the Ultramarine blue. And then as I come down here and go right back into my black and blue again. A little more blue. I definitely want to be able to see that that this part of the woods is very deep and dark. Even though I'm going to have like a bunch of little twigs and everything through it.
Deep dark woods.
You need to have the deep dark woods. These brushes sometimes aggravate people, which I totally get. And it's because it gets a little fluffy. That's why I'm leaning into it. But, you know, sometimes when you're not used to the fluffiness, it can be like, frustrating. Come here just very lightly, almost dry brushing in. I'll get into my green right here. This little corner is just a little bit green. Starting to get some deep forest happening. Just the beginnings. I rinsed out and I'm drying off on my towel. And I'm going to start working my green a little bit over here. So again, it's the burnt sienna and the phthalo green and a little bit of yellow ochre. So I'm going to start piecing in just a little bit of this like yellow ochre here in sort of irregular shapes. And get dark, 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 dark again. I'm going to go in with a little bit of even black and deepen this up even more in this outer corner. And have it dark down through here. So the darkness kind of says, oh, there's underbrush here. That's what we're trying to talk about, is that sort of underbrush.
Right. Sort of
Get a little white over here.
The dead shrubbery.
The dead shrubbery. And then this particular little green is maybe biased a little more brown. Just on the toe of my brush. Making kind of very irregular shape. So it just implies that there's like trees or some type of shrubbery or bush out here. Mix it a little more of my green color. A lot more of my yellow. Just lightly put in subtle highlights. These are highlights that are in a shaded area. So they're subtle. Rinse that out. I'm going to put my number 20 to the side. And I guess we could call this another step. I'm not going to worry too much about drying. And I'm going to get a smaller brush involved. I'm going to get same type of brush, but this one is a number 8 Raphael d'Artagnan in the hog bristle. I'm going to come into my little sky color. Painting some little highlights in these little irregular edges. If I need to get a little blending medium on there, I will to improve flow. Just work this out. You've got this. Right? You're making little steps. You're going. You've got it. Then I'm going to get into my gray. Pretty light gray. Kind of play with the up and down of this distant. These are like little fogged out trees. You barely see them. And piece little bits of gray here and there. And sometimes maybe get into the yellow, the light white sky color and kind of paint little pops of light that might be coming through the canopy.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of scumbling here. But what you're looking for is these really irregular edges and these sort of dappled light that we would have going on. I can even come down here into this area and put a little white into my yellow ochre, burnt sienna, phthalo green with white. Kind of pulling out that light there. So we're just defining this idea that it's brighter here in the center and then getting darker as it comes out. Go into my gray over here. Didn't even rinse out my brush. Maybe a lot more yellow ochre. Just dance a little bit of this yellow color back here. Okay, I'm going to dry everything and then I'm going to show you what you do when we come back. So now I want to put in some distant and far away little trees. I'm going to get my number 6 round. This is the Raphael sepia round. It's just got a good point. And I'm going to get some black paint thinned and loaded on the toe of the brush. And sometimes I will go ahead and get my glazing medium involved just to improve the flow of the paint, because sometimes it will help improve the flow of the paint. You don't want to do too much because it can make it a little more transparent. So it's about finding that balance. Then we're going to just come here and add little bits of trees that are peeking through. Sometimes it helps to be a little quieter during the lighting process.
I noticed you just sort of get focused. It's like
You got to be a little bit.
okay.
You got to be a little bit like stiller for it,
Yeah.
and that's okay. Just little off branches coming off there. It's just kind of a hot mess out there. And just braid little branches off here and there. Fine little lines in the distance, right? These are little distant lines. I also tend to lighten my line and let it get fainter as it goes up towards the light. And then there's another trick where you can come back with a little bit of like glaze to like push stuff back. So you've got a lot of control through here. This one might have a little more noticeable trunk and come all the way off. While I'm here, I'm going to get a bit of my light paint over to my blue-gray. A glazy medium. Go ahead and highlight the forward face of some of these. Just a little bit of highlighting on those little trees. I'm going to grab this little brush. Actually, let's call that a step because that's a lot to put in those little guys.
Nice little grove of trees there.
Nice little grove of trees there. And I'm going to take my round brush again into my yellow ochre. Maybe get a little cad yellow in there. Kind of create a crazier green gold color. Dance a little greenery through there. Might get into my gray color. It's got a little of that green on it. But it's lighter, so you can see how that makes it seem faded out. I might come over to my Phthalo Blue, and I haven't rinsed out my brush. That's key. And I'll put a little burnt sienna in here too. Just so it's sort of a blue-gray, but it's got that kind of a different kind of hue to it, so it pops out against the background of gray. Get more white as it's coming forward. Put white on top of it. I'm over here. Here we go, a little deeper blue for deep down in the bushes. Deep down in the dark, dark bushes.
Deep down.
And let some of the trunk show through. And make little spots of them here and there. Of the different colors going back, and that starts to dapple that light a little. Get back into this, maybe add a little white to it. Again, dappling this light just a little bit. Now we may lose some of this to the trees we put in, but we're just making sure that there's some kind of canopy of light happening here. So when we put the other sort of definitions in, they sit super well with us. The other thing I might do, pick a little bit of my gray color. Glazing medium. And push back some of these little branches and things. A little more grayed out. Get into my green and yellow and ochre again. Just dancing a little bit of that there. All right. So what I have is some different like little trees that are pushed back there that are going to make my path like pull me in. I'm going to dry everything and then I'm going to show you what we're going to do next. Now I want to take in and put a couple of my focal trees now. So I'm going to take my angle brush again. This is the 3/4 inch angle brush, the Princeton Catalyst. And this is the halfway mark. I'm going to go ahead and take the trunk down a little bit from there and about halfway. So in this canvas, about halfway in the halfway. I'm going to just make a nice big giant trunk coming up. And it's going to be a little bit wider out here on the side. And I'm going to do this now because there's no point in painting a bunch of trees back here and then painting this big tree over them. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to come next to it. It'll start kind of, you know, behind it, and then these just go way off, you know, up ahead of us. These are the trees that are closer to us. So get those trees in. And rinse that out. And I'm going to switch back to my round real quick. Go ahead and get my glazy medium involved. And improve the flow of my black paint some. Now right here, so here's the hill coming down to the path. I want to leave a little space between these two trees. Now it is thinner than the other two, but it has to be substantial enough to feel like it's a more old growth tree than just a little sapling. But it's going to be finishing up there in the distant little foreground, and then I'm going to add another little 3 there. So they're just pulling off the path. Not going to worry about the branches or anything at this point. All right. Now I'm going to want to dry everything. I'll show you what we do next. So I'm going to take my number 6 round Raphael brush and I'm going to load it up with more black. I'm going to grab a little of my glazy medium again just to improve that flow. It really does help with the brushability of everything. And I'm going to put some very distant in the ground here, little trees that are holding up this background canopy. These will just be like, much like these guys, these will just be initially black tree trunks.
Right, yeah, I get it.
And then we'll put some shading in it. And then we can layer another layer of leaves over it. So some of these will not actually still go all the way to the top. Some leaves will cover it, but it's just easiest to do this straight up vertical right now. And then paint in what we think we need. I know I'm going to have a lot of flowers and everything layering over there, so I don't have to worry about it. I'm going to get my brush wet again, and I'm going to come right here on the right-hand side, and I'm going to make a little grove. So these are smaller trees that are kind of all clustered together like friends. I don't do the background trees yet because there's just no point until I get these guys in.
Right.
Because I won't know who I need. These guys also go all the way to the top. This one kind of angles in a little bit. It's nice to put some lean on trees. Because sometimes they kind of lean to one side or another.
Just kind of.
Just bringing those up. Just brushing a few trees.
It's a tree.
Just a few of them. Just to bring this a little bit forward into the canopy. This one is a little bit thicker, so I have to thicken it at the bottom. These will be much fainter. Kind of coming back a little bit. So we're just filling in the little grove of what's happening here. These guys are a little bit clustered. Get a nicer load of black there for some distant ones out here. So it's just really filling in the forest. That's all we're really doing here. Take these up to the top. Then we can add some little branches. Just little twigs and branches that come off different directions. I think it's important to know to break some of the branches, like they break off a little bit. They may not be as tidy as others. Breathe. Don't forget to breathe. It's easy to hold your breath when you're doing lines.
Yeah, it
We're just making a little tangle. Now, let's call that a step. And then we're going to come through and we're going to highlight some of that work that we did there. So I'm going to grab my brown. And I left the black on my brush. So I'm like mixing from what I had before. I'm going to get a smidge. That's a small smidge of white. A little more brown in it. And start coming here and sort of highlighting.
Oh yeah, putting the keyhole light there.
Yeah, highlighting the forward face of these trunks. I'll take little short brush strokes and put them into the tree. Kind of implying bark that way.
Yeah, I see that.
On the forward face here. Then these I'm going to do a little more in brighter detail, right? So I will skip those and I'll come over to the other side. Make sure that I have some highlights over here.
That creates that illusion of the keyhole of light there.
Yeah, and it gives some shape to these distant trees, just a little bit to our eye.
Right.
And I don't do it as like a stripe. I kind of try to make it a little uneven so it appears like there's more light in some parts than others. I'll add some of this to these trees, even though I'm going to come in and paint them a lot more. It's just the beginning of what they need. Little rough trees. So that's the other thing that's nice about it is that I don't have to have a perfectly steady hand for these to register or show up or be what they are. I'll wipe off my brush a little bit and I'll get some brown and a little black. But a lot more brown. And I'll add some of that brown in there. I don't want to take out my black entirely. I'm just giving this trunk a little more dimensionality. Tapping the brush up and down, making short little brush strokes. Creates a kind of texture. And I'll leave my dark shadow there. And we come here and add a little bit of white. Make a slightly lighter version of this color. I'll come back to the other side. Just through here a little bit. Put some of that to the front of a couple of those trees. Just so we feel like they're there. I'm going to rinse out. Now these guys kind of really start with the brown and black. So I'm going to get a lot more brown and black over here. And kind of go over it with the brush. Just steadily bringing it down. So I'm bringing these into more of a, they're more in the light than the trees that are around them. I do want to go more into my black though here for just a second and add some little branches. These are maybe a little more considered. And we're going to be putting lots of leaves up there, so the little branches will peek in and out of those leaves. Bring it down a little bit, get more interesting. We'll rinse that out. And now I'm going to do kind of a fun thing. I'm going to get into my yellow ochre. Add that into my black and brown mix from earlier. Make kind of this warmer highlight. Come on the front of this. And I can grab some just burnt sienna. And also work some of that through. And in this kind of landscape, then burnt sienna seems very bright. I'm sort of focusing more of the details here in the middle. I might come over to the other side over here and add a little burnt sienna to the mix over here. Just creating little dimensionality. Now I'll get my yellow ochre mix. And I'm going to make little spots of highlights of light. It's not solid on the trees because they have dappled light from the canopy. So those highlights I want to break up. Like the light is breaking. All right, let's dry that and call that a step. When we come back, I'm going to show you what you do next. So now I want to add some greenery into these areas and kind of layer this in. And I'm going to start with my dark area here at the back. So I'm going to take a little bit of my burnt sienna and my phthalo green and a little bit of the yellow ochre. And I'm going to just add some leaves or greenery that comes in behind and in front of these trees. Just some dimensionality. Come forward with a little more yellow here. Just making sure that there's some variance here. And I just do this between the tree trunks. I'm going to be repainting them in so they can be a little bit weird and varied. Going to mix this back into my green. And we'll come over here and just start to put in a little bit of this type of greenery here. As I go forward, it might get a little more yellow ochre in it. It gets darker as I go back. Maybe darken underneath here. Just trying to create like where the greenery weaves in and out. Just applying little bits of leaves. Let's look at that overhead. So we're just starting to fill in our canopy. Just mix a little bit of this green in there. We're just saying, hey, there's just a little light, little extra light on the front of some of these. And try to make really irregular shapes. Kind of like clouds, these are challenging in that same way of just trying to make enough irregular shapes to really feel like you've got it.
Right, I can see that.
And then also finding spots to highlight to create the form on these guys too. Where just a little bit of light might be going through. Okay, let's call that a layer.
Is that a step or a layer?
I think that's a step and a layer. It's both. Let's call it both.
When it dried, or we just move right on?
Now, we're going to work in here so we can actually just sort of move right on a little bit. So now I'm going to add a little yellow to my yellow ochre. And that just makes a brighter kind of green gold to start with. And I will mix it back here into my darker green. And that'll be my first start of a darker green. And start to pull that layering out. And again, same difficulty here. Same difficulty out in this area, which is how do you make these like little forms that look like leaves peeking out into the pathway. As I come down, I might get into more yellow. And I might even, interestingly enough, get a little red involved. So it kind of takes it almost into an orange. Not quite an orange, but almost into it. Compared, it'll feel like an orange. Just layering a little of that out. Blending that as it comes across the forward of the path. And these I kind of just do more little spots. You don't actually see every branch that holds little leaves out, which is sort of fascinating. Just pulling in a bright color canopy, like what could be, you know, and then you can always get back into your green. Kind of paint those in. Now I've got those leaves in, I'm going to wash this brush and put it aside, and I'm going to come in and take a little bit of my Cad Red to my Cad Yellow and mix that in with my tree color a little bit from earlier. And then I'm going to come on the front of this. Make sure that this little guy is way more highlighted. And that just pulls it a little more into the light.
Yeah.
Just makes it a little more stand out than the trees around it. So we're going to call that a step. So in this step, we're going to start putting in our path. And I'm going to begin with a very, very light color. So I'm going to come over to my path color from earlier, which was the burnt sienna and the Mars black and a little bit of white. And I'll add a smidge of my orange here to it, just to warm it. I'm going to come back here and begin to add this sort of lightness to what is my path. Brush up a little bit up into there. We're going to come back and put in shadows and everything, but you gotta
get the basics in there.
Well, you just layer it in. There's kind of an angulature to everything, so the brush strokes are sort of at an angle, and then the light's kind of coming in, so that's going to be interesting to have that play together.
Yeah.
I'm going to come down, I might add a little more brown into it. I'm going to pull this up on the sides because I'm going to be bringing the forest canopy down into this. Pegging it off into the distance. Now, through about the mid space here, there's a lot of highlights. And I'm going to be layering color. And come into, say, a little more of my burnt sienna and Mars black here. The path is just way more colorful than you might think. And as I'm coming through, you know, the brushstroke directionality may change a little bit. Just small brush strokes, working it through. You've got this, you can do this. It might feel like it's breaking your brain there sometimes, but you've got it. Adding a little more black in as I come down. A little more black and brown. Starting to just talk about the darker areas of the path. come into a little bit of my yellow ochre. And that was mixed with my burnt sienna from earlier. I'm going to bring a little bit of this around. Less of it here. So it'll be more concentrated there, but less of it here.
That makes sense.
So many little taps. I gotta tell you, so many little taps. Just still on this number 6 Raphael round. Just a scruffy brush is really what I'm trying to work with here. A little bit into some, let's grab some yellow and red, but I haven't rinsed my brush. Yet it will seem super vibrant. Kind of there in that center. Mixing back into the yellow ochre. Notice that there's a lot of me mixing and then not rinsing. That's how we're going to get all of this in there easily. And then I'll have little bits of colors from other times, right, that I can get into. A little bit of my burnt sienna, just my burnt sienna. Maybe a little burnt sienna into the black with a little bit of cad red. And come here and paint this sort of more vibrant dirt that's like richer dirt. It's richer dirt.
Richer dirt.
Yeah. We're trying to make the topsoil feel like it comes from, you know, a living, breathing forest. Just dancing that light around. Maybe a little more black into this area. This is darker in the path. Rinse that out. Wipe your brush off. Wipe your brushes off. Let's add a little white to the mix from before, which was the burnt sienna and the Mars black. But I'm going to add a little yellow ochre into it now. A little water drop got me. Let's wipe it away. Just mixing it up on the path. Getting into this yellow ochre. Just do a couple spots down here. This is like dappled light. I'm using soft pressure. Just trying to weave the colors into one another. I can even get a little bit of blue into the mix and get this lovely gray going.
That is a lovely gray.
Yeah, just working out a nice lovely gray. A little more ultramarine blue, just creating a nice lovely gray. I'm gonna put my brush down there and I'm gonna grab my round brush. I'm gonna think about adding some sort of detailing in the path. My little black paint here. Little sharper bits that could be like little stones or just wandered around. And get a little white on here. Come over to my light color again. I haven't rinsed out. And these are just, tighter little brush strokes to like play against the ones that were fluffier.
Right. Contrast.
Yeah. Grab a little white. Maybe get into my orange here. Just randomize this for some like dappled light. Let's look at it overhead. So our path is just starting to come in.
Certainly is.
Sometimes I get a little more yellow ochre in it. Deepen it up, just dancing, dancing, dancing around. Put a little more yellow ochre on my brush. You never knew a path would be this colorful.
It's really awesome. I think it adds a lot of dynamicness to the path.
Just a little bit of that. Now, I want to dry everything and come back. I'll show you what you do next. So we want to bring some light forward and we want to start filling in our forest. I'm going to take a number 8 Raphael d'Artagnan D brush. And this sort of has a filbert shape on one end and it's flat. And then it's kind of rounded on the other. So it's kind of like a blender. And it does nice like greenery. It does a lot of things. You could just use a filbert or you could use the round continuing. I'm going to get it wet and then I'm going to go ahead and dry that off. We'll pull out a little bit of my yellow and I'm going to grab, interestingly enough, a little bit of my ultramarine blue and some of my dark green. I'm just changing up the types of greens that I'm working with. So I want to get really into kind of this green gold. Back here I'm going to just paint in a dark green gold. I'll darken it with brown and green and even blue. Now I'm doing short little brush strokes just to begin to imply the texture that I'm dealing with here. If I come down, I can always add a little bit of black to my green to deepen it even further. And this green is very dark. It's almost like a green black. Just filling that all in. I haven't rinsed my brush, and that's what's keeping it in the green gold ranges. And yellow and black make green too. So that's like, we're really actually, if you think of black as a blue, it gives you a better idea of where we're going. Coming through here, and then I can get back into my yellow over here and some green, and what I'm doing is just playing with different lighter values. Now I'm going to have a bunch of stones and everything here, but I'm still going to kind of layer in this green even though I know I'm putting in a bunch of stones.
Because you gotta have those layers.
Gotta have those layers to get this look. The look you see in the final painting. We get these layers in, we get the painting in. I go forward, I can add more yellow. A little more brown in it. So it's lighter, but I'm trying to just make sure that I've got room to brighten it up even from where I'm at. A little more green. The trick when you have a green area like this is you want to have a variety of green. Variety of greens. More into the yellow. Put a little brown in there. So I'm lightening it up again. And get back into this kind of darker green gold. I'm going to put stones here. I'm going to put flowers here. I'm going to put a lot of stuff. So it's just giving it some architecture to come in from. I want to make sure that this is dark enough coming off of here. And you can see it's nice even the blue underneath. Just short little brush strokes. You can also kind of vary the direction on them if you want to. They don't have to be like little rows. I'm just making sure things around the trees are like painted in tightly. If I have to go over the tree a little bit, I will. Because I can put that tree right back in. Right? I can add that back into my world. And that's that first layer of green. So I will call that a step.
Yeah.
And dry everything, and when we come back, I'll show you what you do next. So let's continue on building in our landscape, building in our layers. I'm going to grab my round brush again, and I'm going to take a little of my Phthalo Blue, and it's okay if there's some Ultramarine blue in there, and some burnt Sienna, and kind of make that blue-green that I had in those one set of leaves back there. And I'm going to start to build up some distant, like bushes or plants that are back here, kind of more in the background. And I'm just adding this blue, the dark blue, and then I'll add a highlight into it. So I'm going to get a little white. I might even grab a smidge of yellow, just so it's a little more aqua. So it's like, oh gosh, that almost antique glass color.
Oh yeah, I was talking about.
I use that one a lot. I'm going to just kind of Apply some highlights here coming in with that blue. And I'm going to just push. So instead of dragging down, I'm pushing up my round brush. This is my number 8 d'Artagnan round, and I'm just pushing up, trying to create that sort of irregular shape. Another little highlight. And then really, really ice this out. Like this almost looks like it's very, very light and bright. And then back into my gray here. Sort of stamp that a little bit. Just apply the little bushes. And I'm going to come right over into my green. I don't even rinse out. Into my yellow where I had my green. Put a little more yellow into that. And then I'm going to come along here. Kind of brush up from the path a little bit of my green. Grab my yellow over to this green that we mixed from earlier, which is our burnt sienna and our phthalo green. We've had some cad yellow in it. We've had some yellow ochre, and we kind of keep mixing. I'm going to add some green into the shrubbery here. I can come in and get darker colors by going into my brown and my phthalo green and blend those in. Now push up here where these two layer in. So you can very easily layer these colors in together. And as I come back through here, I'm pressing up, pushing up. Nice dark green. Just give us a dark value to layer up on. Put a little more brown into it. I'm going to tap up and down. I'm just trying to make kind of a variance in green color.
Yeah, I see it.
A little yellow in. Brush a little light on there. And interestingly enough, I'll get back into my blue-green color. Add a little more blue to it. And go back into that green that I've added there. So just sort of dappling some light around. Put a little more white on my brush. I'll rinse out because I've done a lot of stuff there. Like, it's a lot. I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to grab a little bit of my cad yellow, my yellow ochre again, mix it into the little color here, get a kind of bright green. Not my brightest green, but a fairly bright green. Come along this little path here. And then as I'm going, I'm going to get my darker green involved. And I'm going to switch brushes as I'm coming forward now. And I'm going to get into my dark green colors. And this time I'm going to just I'm not going to beat around the bush. Oh, got some magenta in there. Like a lot of magenta.
Just get right to the bushes.
Yeah, I almost just had pink bushes. It fell into my palette. It was almost a real adventure or a misadventure.
Yeah.
I'm going to grab a little bit of my yellow and take it over to my black. Make a very, very dark green. Kind of tap that in along the edge here. Can work that into this darkest green that I've got going. I just want it really deep. So a lot of times you'll hear people say you don't use black in landscapes, and that's not really true. You do. You just have to use it when you need it for, like, think of it like a blue that has a lot of graying potential. You can gray everything out, and you use it sparingly for shadows.
Sparingly?
Yeah, use it where you need it, but for shadows and those kinds of things. And add a lot more green and black. And I just haven't rinsed my brush. Pretty dark back here. Pulling that forward. Well, that's looking pretty good. Rinse, 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 rinse. So we've just started to cover the floor and the area along the path with a little bit of greenery. I can tap it out more and be more playful with it, but it's just a good place to start. I could dry this, but I'm going to be working over here, so I don't really need to. Yeah.
You just keep right to the next step.
Yeah, I'm just going to go right into the next step. Step 17. I'm going to stay on the same brush. I'm going to mix a lot of yellow into my green gold that I have over here. And I'm going to start to kind of stipple out. I like just pressing, or you can come upwards with the handle up. Just making short little brush strokes that kind of speak to the wild plants that are back here. And there's less of the light as it comes back. There is some. But a lot less. I definitely don't want my brush to be really wet. So I watch that very carefully. Because if it isn't a slightly dry brush, it won't do the technique the way I want it to. So the amount of water you have in your brush here is important. Putting some little plants up into the path. Kind of coming off the embankment into that path. Now I'm maybe putting in a big stone here. So I'm going to rinse this out. And just so I know where that is, I'm going to switch to my round brush, my number 6 round. I'm going to get some just black paint. And I'm going to paint a nice big stone shape. And rocks are kind of angular. And how we get the rock to feel like a rock is the way we highlight it and do that. But I find that it's nice to kind of paint the overall shape of the rock. And then catch the detail of the rock to make it feel like as rocky as it is. So I'm going to go ahead and I want this to be kind of a big rock. Maybe even larger than this. Like it's boulderish. Nice big boulder that's here in the bushes. And it could have some little rock friends. And those are just little blurb shapes. Yeah, so I'm make another little shape. There's going to be grass and stuff around them. So I just need them to be big enough that they would be sticking up. Making some big and some small. I might come over here on the other side and take this time to like kind of imply perhaps a rock that's peeking out from this area here. And we can paint it. So that gives us a few stones in there. And then I kind of know where I want to take my green down to. Because I can see where that is. So I'm going to add a little of my brown and green to my yellow color. A little darker than what I've been doing, and I'm going to just bring this down here. Right up to that rock. Then back into my yellow. This time I'm going to get a little white. So it's quite light. Just keep pulling that through here. Right? By letting these brush strokes be like kind of crazy and kind of messy, what we're doing is we're making space for our mind to fill in the blanks of all the little leaves. I'll come over my tree a little bit. Just a little bit back here. A little more yellow, a little more white. I'm going to rinse out. Kind of start over. Take my little brown and my phthalo green together. And then I'm going to mix a lot of yellow in there. And a lot more brown. So that's good. I'm looking for a slightly lighter color. Still a little bit deep for the rock, and I can paint really right up to that rock. And I'll put some little greenery kind of into the path because it would overgrow a little. I'm not going to worry about taking it too far forward because I have to layer this kind of garden in here. But I will start to think about how I want to build out this area. Just letting that grass grow a little bit. I'll wipe off my brush and my towel, my paper towel here. And maybe mix in some more yellow. Get that brighter color. That bright green. A little more brown and green. Back into the black and green. And get some phthalo green in it. Get some black involved. I can make it quite dark. And deep back here. It's just a rich, dark color.
Shrubbery.
In the shrubbery. Right? You're just creating some depth in the shrubbery. Rinse that out pretty thoroughly. And let's go ahead and give this a try and come back. I'll show you what you do next. So now I'm going to take a 1/2-inch angle brush. I'm going to work on my rocks a bit. I'm going to pull a little of my ultramarine blue over to where it had been mixing with my burnt sienna. Mix a little burnt sienna in with that. I'm going to be making a series of grays to sort of get my rocks shaped out. So I'll start with my dark gray color as a place to start. And I like an angle brush because rocks have such angles on them that the angle brush really helps me find those and get those like crispy edges that I really, really want. And then I'm going to bring this sort of in. So I'm going to look to highlight a plane of it and then look to highlight another plane of it. It's as important to leave deep shadows in your rock as it is to have highlights. I'll go ahead and hit this with that gray too. Here. I'll hit these guys with some gray as well. Just using the shape of my brush to make little rocks. Now, I'm going to get a little more blue over here. And I'll go ahead and get some white involved. There we go. Actually got some more brown in there, but I'm still going to put that out. It's a slightly lighter brown. And I'm going to come along here and just create little edges. I'll highlight here. Just making that little highlight kind of rough. It's really what I'm looking for. Now the focus of these highlights will be at the front of the rocks and at the top. So even as I'm painting them, it's going to come out of the woodwork based on that.
Just come right out of the woodwork.
Make some ledges here. Blend that back. So just starting to see the rock. Your brain wants to see the rock. And that's the important thing to understand, is that your brain really, really wants to see the rock. When it sees its shape like that in the grass, it was looking for rock. And some of this gray up here. I'm using the corner of my brush. Just little faces. Those are kind of in the distance, so we don't have to get too involved with them. use the corner to capture some shapes. Kind of leaving some shading in there. There we go. And then just maybe a little bit on this rock's face. Just a touch. So just those little touches to create, and we don't over here because this one is a little more in shadow. So I want to darken up its brightest highlight a bit. But I still want to have some dimensionality. So maybe right there at that toe, little highlight. A little bit right there, just kind of popping it up. Okay. I'm going to put my angle brush to the side for later. As you're going, remember, it's a good idea to change your water pretty regularly. We're painting for a long duration, and we're using a lot of colors, and the water is going to be getting dirty, so you're going to want to do water changes throughout the project, just so that your colors stay clear and bright.
That sounds smart.
It's just a good thing to do. All right, now when we come back, I'm going to show you what we do next. So I've been doing a lot of hard work here, and I'm going to reward myself with some tree painting. I'm going to have to put out some burnt sienna, though, because as you can see, that is the color I'm using the most of in this painting. And you would normally think it would be white, but it's not. It's the burnt sienna. So I'm putting in a nice amount of burnt sienna because I have a lot to do still. And that's going to give me a lot of room to mix many different browns. Come over here and take a little of my brown and a little of my black together. And that's a nice chocolate brown. And I'm going to be starting out with my number 6 brush. And I'll go ahead and make little marks coming all the way up. And then down into the ground here. Bring a little bit of this to the back side. And do a similar thing right here. A little bit of this to the back side. That'll be for the haloing on the tree where a little light comes to the back end. So our darkest shadow will actually be there, kind of right in this place. Now I'm perfectly happy using this round brush because I have a lot of control over it, but if you're struggling with the control, you can switch to your number 6 sepia round and have a little more control over it. But I'm wanting the roughness of this brush to start this painting out.
That makes sense.
I'm going to grab some just brown. This is my burnt sienna. Making short little brush strokes at that front of that tree. Kind of like the path, there's a lot of layering.
Like a parfait.
Like a parfait. I'm going to grab a little bit of my yellow ochre and mix it in, and that's going to give me a lighter color. I've just brought it over here. I may need to switch for that back one into like the slightly, for me, even the tighter round one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just so I have a little brush control. Now I'm going to add a little white. Maybe even a little more yellow. I want this to be kind of bright and warm. Like little dashy lines here, and then every once in a while I put a little brighter amount of that light. Every once in a while. That's looking good.
Yeah, it is.
You come to the forward face of this tree. That's looking good. Now I'm going to get a little light on my brush here, light white. I'm going to very carefully come to the back side of this tree and do a fine little line. That's the light kind of coming around the back side.
Right.
And I am trying to be kind of delicate about it. For it to look how I want it to look. There we go. Now those little trees, they feel like they're more lit on, you know, a sunlit path, I think. I can always bring a little yellow over to my red and get kind of an orange going. Mix that into my burnt sienna. and add a little more color to the tree. You can always just have a little more color on the tree. Now I'm going to put that brush down, and then we're going to come into our green and brown again. And just make sure that the top of this tree has a few little leaves on it. Kind of blending into what's here. All right, let's call that a step. When we come back, I'll see what's next. So now I want to take my brush. This is, again, back to my number. Is that 6 or 8? This is an 8 round to Archony. I wonder if I've been saying 6 the whole time.
Oh, we'll make sure we get
You know, we don't see the tiny things that well anymore, is what it is, without our reading glasses. So, you know, that's where you go. And I want to put some foxglove in. So I'm going to take my Ultramarine blue over to my Quinacridone Magenta, and I'm going to mix these together, and I'm going to get a lovely little purple going. These are going to be some like wild forest foxglove, or the beginnings of one. We'll come here and tapping up and down. So the foxgloves will be kind of spires. I'm going to add a little white to this so we can really see the foxglove coming in. And then we'll have a lot more highlight as we go forward. Just kind of planting them back there. It's a little challenging. Because we've got to grow these everywhere. They're everywhere.
Everywhere.
They're everywhere. I'm going to grow a few of them right here. And I want to add some bigger, more focal ones here, but I'm thinking I want to put in like a kind of different little shrubbery with some flowers on it.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to get into my Phthalo Green and my burnt Sienna. I'm going to make little taps. Quite a dark green. And then I'm going to get a little white involved. And highlight my dark foliage with a little bit of white into that green. So it's very different than all the other greens I've mixed. Kind of short little strokes, focused at the top of what is this little bush here. And I'm going to want to take a little bit of my yellow and a little of my Cad Red. Kind of gray it a bit with my purple. I'm going to tap my round brush back into these different little segments. These are like little blooms that are coming off. And they layer into the bush a little bit. Get my original round, which is the number 8 Raphael round, not 6. And add a little more white to my purple color. Come back here and start to put the bases in for the foxglove.
Gotcha.
That's coming forward more into the light. Kind of pinching my brush. See if I can make it make more of a point. Put a little purple here and there. Just some distant little version of it. Now I'm going to take my round brush, which I have a little bit more control of. I'll mix a larger amount of my purple together, my light purple. Add some white to it. And I'm going to do the fussy business.
Getting the fine flower highlights on.
Getting that fine flower highlight on. Shaping them in layers so that it pushes this one is behind this one. And that's kind of a trick here, is like making sure that some are more in the distance and some are pulled forward.
Right.
And come right here and use that same technique over here on the other side to kind of finish out some of these little foxgloves.
Uh-huh.
They'll have 3 layers of light on them.
Multi-light.
They'll be multi-lights, yeah. These are kind of smaller ones that are starting in the bushes. And get a lot more white onto there. And highlight these far away ones. So I always think it's like such a surprise. You see wild foxglove out in the forest. Super poisonous. Don't eat it. I generally have a policy of I don't eat stuff from the forest.
Wow.
Well, because like every once in a while, even an experienced mushroom person will make a mistake.
Yeah, that's very true. I would generally not just randomly try to eat things from the forest either. That would not be good.
Yeah, and given my scores in botany, not going to risk it. I am a hobbyist at identifying plants, but I don't put any of those in my mouth.
Yeah.
We don't test it with my life. We test it against the app. You know what I'm saying?
And the app may be wrong.
The app could be wrong, but still, it's a very low risk of death kind of a thing.
I was looking at the wrong screen there for a moment.
I jumped on you.
Yeah.
So sometimes I jump on John. I bounce back and forth through some things. I'm just adding a few little highlights to some of these. And come back down here. Make sure that these have some highlights as well. You'll rinse out. Get a little more yellow over into that orange I made from earlier. How you guys doing? I hope you're doing good. Take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Stretch your back if you need to. It's an involved piece. A lot more yellow and a little bit of white. This is just for those ones that are really kind of out into the path. You guys have this, you've got it. Just try to keep remembering that as things get away from this corridor of light and this light coming in, so there's light coming in and it's mostly focused right here and it's spilling in through the trees, and what we're trying to do is capture that feeling of where the light is just touching some of what's here. I'm going to take some white over to my kind of blue-gray from earlier and mix something. It almost feels like it's white, but it's got a little blue-gray tint to it. You need to grab some brown into your brush. And we'll roll that out. And add a touch of this white back here. Now come across. And that'll be reminiscent of the little flowers that we have up here. Because nature tends to plant in a kind of scattered and repeated way.
Yeah.
So we're just putting in little pops of color, and our brain is like going to make it flowers. All right, now I want to dry everything, and then when we come back, I'll show you what you do next. So while I'm here, I want to also create some shading or shadow across my path, a little more dynamic lighting. And I'm going to take my Ultramarine blue and my burnt sienna to make a gray to do that. I'll mix those together. I'm using my number 4 D brush, and I'm going to be using my glazing medium. So I'm going to wipe it off when I don't really want a lot of water in it, and I do want a lot of glaze on it because it's going to be about creating a shadow, but where you can see what's underneath well. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come across here in the distance, and that's a little heavy. So I might lift that up. Got to find my shadow value. It really registers.
The shadow value.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, that's a very nice value.
Kind of off in the distance. Maybe another little shading coming across here. I might actually get into my black here to make this work.
Now, I have heard that like there's like all sorts of rules around like using different colors and landscapes. Is that true? Or is that just like
I
opinion?
think what they are is that people who are very familiar with painting landscapes but also teaching landscapes will recognize that some things are troubling for students, and they'll make
Oh.
some general comments. Like sometimes it's about their preference.
Hmm.
Like they prefer, I'm going to tap this in because I want this to be smooth and not have edges. This is, like little light that's showing down, so I don't want it to, it's just a little bit of a shadow. And so they'll say things like you can't use black in landscapes.
Yeah, I've heard that one before.
Yeah.
And that you can only use which one's the transparent white?
Zinc white.
Zinc white. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's just different things, but really what I find is there's I don't ever discount the wisdom behind it. I just also recognize that sometimes it's more about, I'm gonna add some black into that, controlling the chaos of students, really honestly, than necessarily about, and sometimes it's also about their strong opinion.
Or teaching like a specific concept.
Yeah, like they may have gotten into a particular practice and they just feel that way strongly.
No, because if one was going to say, I'm going to work in monochromatic, well, then you are limited to like two, right? You
Right.
can't do three because then it's not monochromatic.
Right. So sometimes it's about the artist that you're studying with
Right.
and what they're about. So I'm just trying to create a little bit of a sense of light coming across the path some.
The path of light.
There's a lot of ways to do this. This glazing method is one way, but another way might be to use what's called localized color, which is you mix all these colors again much darker and then paint them across. So it's not right or wrong, it's just a different path or process.
How you do.
Just how you do. So I'm just going to continue to darken that down here. And the transparency helps me sort of control that. You can see that starts to dapple the light some. Maybe just ultramarine and Mars black. Some glazing liquid to keep it somewhat transparent. Just deepening that light down here. So I'm not erasing the work and the colors and everything that I painted. I'm just letting this glaze kind of darken them into that deeper value. I've glazed this up front a little bit too, just darkening it as well. That just sort of increases the drama.
The drama.
Yeah, sometimes you're looking to increase the drama. I like that very much. I'm going to also kind of do this over here. Just a little bit. So this will be a little zone of dark. And we'll be thinking about that when we're putting in our grass. Just remembering that this is a zone where everything is a little bit darker. So you can kind of start to see that shadow being cast there. Maybe getting a little more pigment here. This is one of the things where sometimes less is more.
Right, yeah, I see it.
And we're going to soften this like hard line with plants and everything. We just want to get it in there so we know where it is. So we're like sort of dancing the light around in that kind of a way. All right, we're going to call that a step, and I'm going to dry everything and come back. I'm going to show you what to do next. So now I'm going to continue to fill in my landscape. I'm going to get back into my green gold, which I know is my burnt sienna, and a little of my phthalo green, and a lot of my cad yellow. But I'll start with this kind of like darker value. Kind of working that back in here. And maybe around the front of this rock. And then I'll just start getting my brush with this paint. I'm going to push that kind of like forward like I have. May also add a little white to it. Glazy medium to improve flow. Touch little areas. These are just like little bits of leaves and stuff. We're going to be dancing those variants of green. I am using the number 4 Raphael D brush, and I'm kind of pushing forward on it. It's not probably great for the brush, but it works very, very well.
Brushes were made to be used.
Brushes were made to be used. I'm going to tap it on the side there to kind of talk about maybe little bits of grass that come forward. A lot more yellow into the green. The further away, the shorter I'll be with the strokes. So even if I'm catching a little light here and there, when I'm farther away, I'm going to be a little shorter with them. Now come on the corner and make little spots or little dots. And these will kind of like paint in the idea texture of leaves, maybe something. We're just varying it up. Back into my green gold. And this is sort of what I mean by localized color. I'm going into a darker green where the shadow is. Let those little rocks get nestled into the grass. And come on the edge maybe and sort of change up the length of the brush stroke a little bit. Get a little white on there. So it's little highlights in the shadows, but they're not as bright as what's out here. I'm just touching in a few places. I don't want to overwhelm this part of the surface with this. Maybe a little more brown, a little more yellow. I'll pick up some green here, just kind of changing up the type of green it is. What we know what we're doing is placing the rock in the grass. Get a little more green and a little more yellow in there. Like to come along the edge and sort of bring the plants a little bit over the path.
Gives them some depth layering.
Yeah, you want to give them as much depth as you can. Kind of object placement in relationship to the path, right? So the grass going over the top pushes the path down into the ground. Got a darker green going now. I can get right into my darker greens whenever I want. I haven't rinsed my brush out. Just layering the different green colors. Deep breath. You're doing good. It's a little repetitive.
You're doing good.
That's okay. Well, thank you. A little bit of very dark green. Kind of working that up front. Gonna take a little bit of my black, my blue, kind of come along here. And just add a little shadow to the front of that path. So it has a little bit of weight. Now that's pretty good. We've really planted a lot of plants. So we're going to dry everything and start putting in grasses and flowers and some of the frosty bits that make the painting so colorful and gorgeous. So I want to put a pop of orange and red through here, and I'm going to size down my brush to the number 0D brush. I like the 8, the 4, and 0. Those are the ones that I tend to like go to a lot. Shameless plug, those are all available in my store. The art store. If you guys want to get them, have these D brushes in the store, these exact ones. And my recommendation is the 8, the 4, and the 0. You're welcome to get other sizes too. That's just what I tend to paint with in my lessons. So I'm going to use the 0 here. And the reason I'm going to do that is that I want to create flowers that are similar to the, the foxglove, but these are maybe more like lupines and things. So I'm going to begin by taking a little bit of my Cad Red aside, and I'm going to grab some Cad Yellow. And I'm going to make a little orange. And a little more yellow, so there's sort of a yellow-orange. So I've got like 3 ranges of orange that I can get into here. Squeeze out what I can. I'm going to tap off my paint on a paper towel, and I'm going to come back here. Tap, 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 tap. And I'm going to just try to add little hints of this orange flower that's in the grass there. Maybe a little more orange than what I have. I turn the brush in my hand too. That's a weird thing that I do, but it helps hide the pattern of the brush. So I'm not just stamping out a brush pattern. Now I might get a little of my magenta into here so that as I stamp back towards the back, it's darker. So even though full, it'll appear a little bit darker. I'll put a little bit of that darker color sort of underneath those bright patches. I'm going to get into my bright, bright orange, which is my Cad Red, and a little bit of my Cad Yellow. I'm going to come up and add some little vertical. I'm using the edge of the brush Take some of those flora, and we're going to bring those all the way down through here. Might get some glazing medium involved just to improve the flow. I still want it to be fairly dry in the brush, but I want to be able to offload some paint, so. The trick is try to create something where there's a bit of an up and down patterning. Maybe bring a little color forward. So that creates a nice little run of red through the painting. Now I want to come across here and maybe get back into my magenta a little bit because it's a little more in shadow. Not that we're not going to put some bright red on there, but we are. We just want to show this as a little more get the brighter orange. Tap a little of it that there. It's just planting some flowers.
Just a little bit at a time?
Just a little bit at a time. I might come back over and use the stronger red. Couple places. Just to make some of it stronger in the red. I'm going to rinse my brush out. And I'm going to go ahead and grab a little yellow. I'm going to come over and kind of tone it maybe like with a little bit of my quinacridone and my cad red. And just use the corners to plant some flowers.
That's really cool.
A little bit subtle. Rinse out pretty thoroughly. I grab a little bit of my quinacridone and my ultramarine blue again. with a smidge of titanium white. And add just a little bit of that purple there. Once that purple's in, I'm going to take a round brush, my number 6 round from the Sepia Raphael, and get it a little bit wet, wipe it off, and add some white to my purple mix. Just kind of define those little flowers some. Tapping up and down. So I just get a little pop of color there. And while I'm down here, I'm going to take my number 4 brush again. I'm going to grab some of my green gold. And make sure that I've got some nice greenery grounding all this in. See, that sort of plants it in. All right, that was a lot. We're doing really good here. Let's dry everything and I'll show you what we do next. So I want to come and work this forward area a little bit. And one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to shift over my shadow some because I want the angles of these to be more similar. So I'm going to add more light up through here and then move that dark back. It just will read more visually better. More visually better.
More visually better.
Yeah, it'll read visually better.
I love all of that.
Yeah, technical term. Get my glazing liquid. And I'm just going to come here and kind of look at these angles. And just keeping it a little similar. Pick that up a little bit so it's like going to be a little bit of grass-like. Go into my green gold. You can see I'm just sort of nudging that shadow a little more in line with the other shadows.
An excellent nudge.
Just a good way to nudge it. Make it a little more irregular and bumpity. Rinse that. I was using the number 4D brush for that. You've got this. The brush has got you.
Brushes.
So I'm going to pick up my round brush and I'm going to grab some of my yellow. I think I need to put out some more yellow. So I'm going to also add some more yellow palette. Not too much because I'm at the end of the painting and I don't have that many yellow things left. But enough so that I'm not struggling to get it. I'll put it over here by my red so I can have lots of little oranges where I want them. I'm going to grab a little bit of my yellow and orange here. And I'm going to make a ton of little orange dots. Some big, some small. Yeah, varied. Maybe like real small there. Wherever I want to do them kind of more in shadow, I'll get a little magenta into that. Back into my brighter orange.
Just little polka dots all around the field.
Right now, you're polka dotting your field.
That's pretty cool.
Gonna let that have a little bit of a dry for a minute. Let it think about what it's done, as we like to make.
How those are.
Yeah, we always make them think about what they've done. Think about its life choices. I'm gonna come in and add some more lupines here. I'm gonna grab my purple again, which is my quinacridone, and my ultramarine blue, and a little bit of white. And make some larger little lupines going up. So this is my darker purple, and then I come back, with my lighter purple. Bring some back by the tree. Rinse that out. I'm going to then take a bunch more white, right, into that purple. We're not doing something new. We're kind of like, sometimes in a painting like this, there's things that they just repeat. You know, so it feels like it's a new thing, but it's really not a new thing. Come back here and highlight just this one because it's a little bit in the light. They have highlights, but they're not as bright. Grab a little more blue into this. I'm going to come here and make my dark green, which is my burnt sienna, and my phthalo green. And add some little vertical lines. I might even get a little black into it. It's quite... Just bring those around a few places. Just that variance, right, of plant life and stuff, so it just feels a little less all the samey same. Because sometimes this can get a little samey same.
Just a repetition.
Yeah, it gets a little repetitive. I'm going to add a lot of yellow into my green. Get some glazing medium into this so that it'll flow. Load up on the toe of my brush. Just a little bit dancing here and there. Break up the samey same. The repetition.
Just all the little flowers. There we go. Every time I turn my mic on, it rubs on my beard, so it makes this weird sound. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, you have been sitting here for a long time watching the forest come in. And you have been here a long time painting the forest. I just want to acknowledge anyone who's still here. If you're still here, pat yourself on the back for being just an art champion. Keep it going.
Well, it's actually really kind of cool to watch.
Now I might come and get a little bit of the white into my paint and a little more yellow. Just a few little light grasses here and there. Also going to make little touches here of what could be different types of leaves.
Little bright leaves.
Mm-hmm. Just irregular. Irregular. My favorite shoe brand, Irregular Choice.
Right.
Maybe a darker color. And that just kind of also breaks up that patterning. Okay. So now I'm going to want to rinse that brush out. And I'm going to dry everything. And then I'll show you the last fussy bit that we're going to do here. So now I'm definitely going to want to put my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to add some very fussy little white petals and bright tops to these flowers. The glasses just help me see better. I'm going to grab a small detail and figure out one of my favorite details. I always have to dig through here. All right, this one I think is going to be my best shot for it. I'm going to get it wet. I'll wipe it off. And then I'm going to take a little bit of my white And it's okay if there's some ultramarine blue over here. It doesn't have to be bright white. It can be kind of a little bit off-white. And my glazing liquid. And I'm going to start painting in little dashes that are these little flowers. Now some of them will be all the way around like that one. And some will be like this one, where they're facing to the side. I might need to get some glowing medium on it and wipe out my brush so that it's not too clumpy. Sometimes I'll make the flowers much, much smaller. Just this little clump of daisies along our little walking path. So when you hang this up on your wall now, you're going to have this walking path, this window.
Yeah.
That when you look at it, your mind will go up the path. It'll be like really peaceful for your mind.
I love it.
And bright colors, make it feel like it's full of life. Just going around.
I love this little collection of flowers here. It's very cheerful.
Yeah, I think it does make this like a much more cheerful painting. I mean, it was already pretty cheerful. I'm just barely putting little petals back there. They're just hiding them.
Nice seeds.
This is a #1 Precision Raphael. It's just a detail brush that will let me do these little petals. Not give me too much grief about it. Because you don't want the grief. And you can layer them over each other, which is nice. Put tiny little ones that are down low. Just fussy going around.
Yeah.
Have as many as you want. It's your little path of flowers.
Yeah, you can add as many as you like. I like the little collection here, different little little areas of things to look at.
Well, the biodiversity, right, makes it feel like this forest is very, very healthy. I'm kind of glad we did this because I wanted to do we've done green on green on green.
Yep.
We've done a lot of fall forest, but we haven't done that same sort of lush technique in like a summer spring forest. And I think this gives us that lush technique. Just a little tiny one planted there. I like breaking them up, big ones, small ones. And we're actually getting through this much quicker than I expected.
It's really, really looking nice.
So, this is a lot of a landscape. If this is too much of a landscape, I've got 1 hoot, 2 hoot landscapes, but this is like your 3 hoot landscape.
And this really isn't hard. It's just there's a lot of repetition.
There's a lot of repetition and a lot of layers. And it's time intensive. There we go. We'll rinse out. Now I'm going to take a lot more of my yellow. I'm going to go into my orange. Kind of a brighter yellow orange. And add some second little coat to the centers.
Just a little highlight.
Well, also because, when you first put them out, the yellow is maybe not as vibrant as it could be. And go a little more into the red, maybe even into the magenta. Kind of make sure that some of these have slightly darker centers. Still highlight them a little bit though. Let's see how that looks. Oh, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that really came together.
That is a lot of fun. All right. So there's nothing to do but sign it. Now here's the thing on signing it though. I'm not going to use a color that is going to throw off the whole composition. I'm going to pick something that I've been using throughout. Right? And that way when I sign it, it's not going to just take all the eye away from the rest of the painting. So I'm going to use a green here.
Yeah.
And even this might be too much, but I think we can get away with it. All right, when we come back, I'm going to tell you what we do next. So that was a big one, wasn't it, John?
Yeah, that was.
That was a long walk up the forest path.
I think it's worth it, though.
Very, very worth it. Our payout is this gorgeous scene that we get to enjoy and have all these little flowers and that feeling of spring and life and vibrancy. If you'd like to share your version of this painting with me, there's the Art Sherpa official group on Facebook. You can come by and join that. There's like 3 little questions and you just answer them and then in you go. And we really moderate that group. And so it's for places like if you do the tutorials, it's just a great place to share it. And it doesn't show on the rest of Facebook. If you're like, Facebook, I'm on all the other social media under the Art Sherpa, so you can find me anywhere and hashtag me in the Art Sherpa, or you can write support at theartsherpa.com and send me that painting directly. So I'm always happy to see your paintings. If you had a question I didn't get to in this particular lesson, be sure and put it in the comments below. I really check my YouTube channel every day. I don't see every question, but I do check every day. So there's a good chance that I'll see your question and be able to answer it. And that is kind of why I'm here. So don't ever feel weird about asking them. I really want to congratulate you for what you've done here. It's super impressive. You have really gone the duration. This is definitely all the hoots in a landscape, and hopefully you feel as good about your landscape as I do about mine. Everything you saw here on the show is available at my store. Shameless self-plug, but it is.
Yeah, do that.
And if you want to support really cool lessons like this for free on YouTube, I have a Patreon. And I do exclusive classes with them. Some of them are deep dives like this. There's a Zoom class. There's Zoom classes. We do watercolors. We do oil pastels. We do just a bunch of different stuff. And it's a really fun little thing, so you can find that over on Patreon. And other than that, there's nothing for you to do but be good to yourself, be good to each other, and I want to see you at an easel really soon. Bye-bye!